So I heard you've written a book recently. Can you tell me your name and a little bit about what inspired you to write it?
My name is Teichrib, and I am from Gladstone, so I'm a local author. My book is called Mr. Beaver and the Paddle, and it's inspired by the White Mud River. So the white mud that runs right past our little farm here, the one that goes through Gladstone, we look out the window and we see all sorts of critters on the river. We've seen beavers and deer and all sorts of things come up. So this one, a few years ago, I was on the other side of the river and I needed to get back, and we came looking and the paddle was gone. I was like, well, where did our paddle go? And lo and behold, a beaver had stolen the paddle and had put it in its dam.
Oh my.
And from it I was like, isn't that an interesting story? And from it, Mr. Beaver and the paddle, just the idea of it kind of came to pass.
That's pretty interesting.
I'm going to read you just the back of it. In a quiet forest behind the farm lives the Riverbend Critters. Mr. Beaver has found the most amazing stick. It floats, it's great to sit on, and is perfect for his lodge. Come along with Mr. Beaver and his friends as they learn some important life lessons. So Mr. Beaver in this book finds a paddle, and he thinks it is the most amazing thing. The problem is, it doesn't belong to him. It's not his paddle. Yeah, you can take a look. It's a fun story that anyone can read.
Okay.
So,
yeah, those are beautiful illustrations.
well, when I first started, I had no idea where to get an illustrator. So I thought, well, maybe I could do them myself. And I started actually painting them myself. And then I realized this was going to take far too long. So I went online and I found an illustrator who's actually lives in Pakistan.
Okay.
So all of our communication has been through email. But because she's in Pakistan, she didn't know what a beaver looked like. So the first few illustrations I got back from her, I think it looked like more like a muskrat, or like it didn't look right. So we had to go back and forth quite a bit before we got close to
like a beaver.
Before it looked like a beaver. So you can actually tell. It's kind of interesting. Is there's some pictures in the book which I'm like, that doesn't quite look like a beaver, but it's close enough. And there's other pictures where like, oh, that looks like a beaver. So the ones that she illustrated last, she got better at drawing the beavers, and so they're quite nice. I quite like them.
Yeah.
So she's very talented. To be able to draw something that she'd never seen before is a pretty amazing gift.
Yeah. So, what was life like growing up here in Gladstone?
Well, for me, it was pretty good. So we live on a little acreage about 7 miles out of town. So on this, we lived on a different acreage, and now we live on this one. But there was always different critters running around. So we've had horses and dogs and cats and cows. So growing up out on a farm, there's really something quite sweet and innocent about it. And so I really loved being able to go out and ride my horses or go to the garden. And that's probably where my love for animals came from, and nature. So it makes sense to me when I look out and be able to see the different things in nature, that those are the things that I like to write about.
When did your interest in writing begin?
You know what? Ever since I was little, I really liked to write and to make up stories. I remember when I was a kid, I had either read a story or watched a movie, and I looked at the plot and I'm like, they're missing parts of this story, and I started filling in the holes. And so ever since I was a kid, I've loved stories. So it was actually when I was like 13 or 14 years old, I'm like, you know what, I want to write. It's actually kind of funny because I was just in the Gladstone Elementary School reading it, and I pointed out on the first page, I was like, well, this river, it's based on the White Mud River. And I said, what's the difference between the color of this water and the White Mud River? What's the big difference? And it was the color of the water. Because we all know the white mud is not
very white.
not very white.
Yeah.
No, it was a lot of fun writing. It was a lot of fun being able to share it with kids. There's a lot of different books out there that they're fun books, but they don't really have a point to it. So it's fun being able to make something that has a point and a lesson that can be learned. I'm actually planning on a whole series of books. So on this map, you'll notice all these different little characters. So there's Rocky Raccoon and Edward Bald Eagle and Gus the Goose, which my next book is actually going to be about Gus the Goose.
Okay.
So, and that is already in the works. So that's kind of cool. So each one of these will hopefully be a story for kids one day.
Yeah. So where can we buy this book?
Heart and Soul in Gladstone and Honeybees in Portage la Prairie. And then on Amazon, you can also type in Mr. Beaver and the Paddle and it will come up.
Okay. Who was the first person you were telling stories to growing up?
Well, the first person who heard my stories would have been my little brother Matt. So he was 6 years younger than me. And I remember I'd go out and I'd play with him. And oftentimes he'd go, Emily, can you tell me a story? And so I'd take him out to the sandbox and I would build these little towns and I would tell him the story that would go with whatever it was. So he was constantly going, oh, I want to hear a story. I want to hear a story. Which is kind of funny because now my own kids are constantly going, Mom, I want to hear a story. But he would have been the first person who heard copious amounts of my stories. He was a pretty fun-loving little brother. He actually passed away about 9 years ago. Well, on Monday it'll be 9 years. And Matt was one of the most sincere but goofy guys you could get. He cared, like he was just a kid, but I've never seen anyone else do this. He literally and genuinely cared about those around him. He would see kids who were not being included, and he would go out of his way to include them and to love on them. But one thing that Matt had was that he loved Jesus, and because he loved Jesus, he loved people. He loved playing with kids. He would go out of his way to play with the kids and to make sure everyone was doing okay. After he passed away, actually, we found his statement of faith on his phone, that this was just something he declared. And so I'll read it here. It chokes people. It's known as sin. People act as if there's no God, but they know. Not all, but some do. God made me to think, feel, and know Him. God loved me so much that He died on a tree for my sin. If not doing that, my sin would keep me from Him. I am free from all sin, just as God sent His Son to free us wherever. I will tell the world that God loves them. For all have fallen short of the glory of God, and we can trust Him to carry us through anything. If someone were to ask me to die, they'd probably think I'm crazy, or to die for me, they'd probably think I'm crazy. God is the only way to heaven. My name is Matthew Teichrib. I'm a follower of God. God made us to love one another. The end is near. God is coming soon. So we have to believe in Jesus Christ. And it's kind of funny because he died shortly after he wrote that. And the impact his death had on his friends and young people around him was quite interesting. But it is, we never know how long we have. But for the time that Matt had, he served the Lord and he cared for others. And he used his time wisely. A lot of times we can think, oh, we have all the time in the world, but we don't use our time wisely. We don't always use our time for loving and caring for others, or for serving Christ. if we are a follower of Jesus, then we need to use our life and the gifts and the talents and the abilities we have to serve him. It's lessons that sometimes we have to learn. I remember when we found it afterwards and reading it, it was like, yes, this is true. And he was a kid at the time, but he had the insight to knowing, you know what? God is the one who forgives us of our sins. He's the one who saves us.
That is really powerful. Like, having that written down.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, like, what does
It's almost like he knew.
Yeah, it is. It makes you wonder, what does our lives say about who we serve and what we believe? When someone looks at us, can they tell, like, do we actually love people? Are we caring for people? Are we concerned about them? What does our life say to the people around us? Because we don't actually know how long we have.
How did you take that and grow and not let it get you down or make you bitter or?
Well, when something that hard happens, and it was hard, it was definitely when you lose a loved one, that is the hardest thing that can happen, especially when you lose somebody that young. And it does change you. Like when Matt passed away, it definitely changed who I was and how I responded to things. Because there was times prior, somebody would be like, oh, I lost this person or that person, and I felt bad for them, but I really didn't have any understanding of what that meant or what that person was going through at the time. And afterwards, I was like, wow, I was really dumb. Like, I had no idea that this person was really going through that deep of water, and it's very hard. So for my family, we talked about it a lot, and we clung to Jesus because we knew that Matt loved Jesus. We knew that he was a dedicated follower of Jesus Christ, and with that, we knew that he is now in heaven. So we know that we're going to see him again. We know that our hope is not in the fact that he was here, he's gone, and we're never going to see him again. Our hope is in the fact that he is in heaven, and that one day we will see him again. And until then, we need to keep trusting Jesus and knowing that God has a plan for all of this. And even in the hard things in life, God still has a plan in it. And he's going to use the hard stuff. He is in the business of making beauty out of ashes. In the hardest areas of our life, and in the hardest times when we're going through, he is the one who walks us through it, teaches us, guides us, molds us. And at the end of it, we can look back and we can see, okay, what did God do through all of this? And at the time, it can be very difficult to see what's going on. But we can look back and we're like, no, you know what? This is what God had in store. And it's really difficult right now, but he is ultimately the one in control, and he is the one who takes care of us. It is, when you lose somebody, it is a long journey of healing. But we don't do it alone. We have the God of the universe who is walking beside us and with us, and who loves us and is caring for us, and who doesn't give up on us, even when we're struggling and we're going, you know what, I don't know if I can make it through this. We on our own, we can't. But he can, and he's going to walk with us through it.
And you're still sharing stories.
And I'm still sharing stories. Yes, I am. Well, you use the gifts and the ability that God has given you, and God has given me stories, and it's about time I start sharing them.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Do you have any advice for young writers?
Well, writing and writers are kind of funny because a lot of people want to write and have stories. But you write the story and you get kind of blocked because you don't know where to go from there. And you start putting up this big wall and like, well, what do I do? Because you don't know where to go from there. You like writing stories, but you kind of stop. So my advice is don't stop. Do the next hard thing, because once you start going through it, you find out it's not as hard as you think it is. It's not as hard as you've made it out in your brain. Don't stop, just do the next step. Do the next thing.